Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei got married with Rias' mother Venelana part 2. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Nefarious doctor for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. Issei was breathing steadily as he was relaxing in Media's arms, who was also enjoying the cuddle session with her master. Media loved cuddling with her master since she was enjoying the time together without the other women trying to sink their claws into her beloved husband. Leonidas found it amusing, having teased her about being a coddling wife. This resulted in Leonidas suffering the flying frying pan of death, leaving the Spartan king stumbling, much to the surprise of Semiramis, who was curious how a frying pan did that much damage to the shielder. Medea was enjoying her dreams of the two of them doing the deed and having a child of their own, a talented baby boy or girl with long purple or brown hair, along with her pointed ears. Still, they would have the eyes of their fathers as well as his kind and perverted personality. Medea was still okay with the harem plan that Issei dreamed about, but he wanted to make Medea happy as well. Hence, he asked for her permission, which meant that Medea had interviewed Semiramis, knowing that the Poison Queen was someone she trusted with her beloved. The troublesome ones were Scathach and the new saber of the group, despite how cute she is in the many outfits she willingly, wears to take multiple pictures. Venelana was an entirely different problem since she had also been educating Issei on how to use his sacred gear, Annihilation Maker, which amazed the witch, as she could imagine the possibilities for her master, should he use its full power, which gave the witch wonderful idea that involved her noble phantasm and Issei's agreement with the plan she had in mind for the sacred gear. Unfortunately, her dreams and thoughts were interrupted by the beeping of Issei's alarm clock. Medea was tempted to destroy it, but Issei beat her to it by hitting the off button. "Don't even think about it, Medea," Issei said as he slowly opened his eyes to see the mop of purple hair belonging to Castor. Medea's eyes met his stare, and she pouted at him. "I want some more time with you before I have to send you to your training with that devil," Medea said. Issei nodded and looked at his first servant with a sleepy grin before her. Medea as she reciprocated, transferring mana in the meanwhile. "Can't we stay like this for just a bit longer?" Medea asked. Issei smiled at her request before hugging her tighter. "Of course we can. I'll spend as much time as you need before I go to training." Medea smiled at him before the two cuddled even more until Issei's phone vibrated. The witch groaned in disappointment as she saw the caller ID was none other than Scathach. "TCH. Stupid Lancer." Medea scoffed as she ignored the call before shoving the phone in her bust. She snuggled alongside her lover before the phone vibrated again, making her tick mark appear even larger, until she just turned the phone off before smiling at her plan. "Serves you right, you stupid sadist," Medea muttered. She was about to enter dreamland with her husband once again until she was met with the face of an irate Scathach. "I'm sorry, Medea. What did you call me just now?" Scathach asked as Medea was frozen in fear like a deer in front of headlights until she swallowed her spit and looked down to see Issei was wrapping his arms around her waist, which made the queen smile a bit before she glared back at the witch. "Did I say stupid sadist?" Medea stuttered, sweating in fear. I mean wonderful queen." She hoped to have escaped death, only to receive a punch to the head, sending her crashing into the wall. With the witch disposed of, Scathach picked up Issei in a bridal carry out of the room. "I'll take him with me while you freshen up. Unlike you, I am trying to keep him on a good sleep schedule," Scathach said as she teleported away, thanks to the special wards of Semiramis. Medea could only growl in indignation with Issei being taken from her soft body. "TCH. You may have won the battle but not the war." With a huff, Medea left the bedroom to freshen up and prepare some food for Issei after Scathach tortured her beloved master. Still, it was a wife's duty to make sure her husband was safe from the abuse that he would endure. When the supernatural world is aware of who he is, Issei will have no choice but to get involved, mostly due to Venelana wanting to establish a more intimate relationship between them, rather than the whole familiar ritual. Medea knew that Venelana was an extremely powerful magic user, but she would rather die again than let the devil of a woman seduce her husband to take him away from her. "Now to get ready to help my husband with his training," Medea said as she said. Looking at the calendar in the hallway, she saw that it was almost time for the second part of his training to begin. Venelana talked about some surprises for the teenager. "I do hope he's prepared for whatever crazy scheme Venelana is planning," Medea said as she then headed to the kitchen and wrapped her apron around her waist before cooking a nice brunch for her master after Scathach finished torturing Issei. Meanwhile, with Venelana. "So, is it still okay for me and my friends to come to Kyoto for some special training, Yasaka?" Venelana asked the leader of the Yokai. "Of course. After hearing about your students and friends, the Shinto gods and Kunu are interested in seeing these friends of yours. It'd be nice for Kunu to meet some people her age," Yasaka said in response. She was happy to have Issei associate with Kunu since she thought the two would be able to hit it off as friends. Wonderful. We'll be at my summer house there in Kyoto after today, so we'll be able to meet you around tomorrow morning. Would that be an acceptable time? Venelana asked as Yusaka looked over the schedule for tomorrow. Of course. We'd be more than happy to have you for breakfast. Also, it'll be an excellent way for the Shinto gods and myself to see these people you spoke about. Wonderful. See you soon, Yusaka. Give Kunu my regards. I can't wait to see how much she's grown. Venelana said as Yusaka smiled and replied. I shall. See you tomorrow, Venelana. Yusaka said with Venelana smiling for the scheduled meeting. Venelana had been planning an opportunity for not only Issei, but also the heroic spirits to associate with the Yaokai faction. She knew about Kunu having trouble with her lessons from Amaterasu and Tsukiyomi, so she thought that Issei coming along would be a way not only to help strengthen the devil's relationship with the Yaokai faction. She also thinks it would be a good idea for Issei to associate with Kunu since he's changed a lot in the last month due to his training and interest in mastering his abilities with his team. Leonidas was more like a mentor and older brother figure to Issei, who helped him become stronger in physical terms, but also gave him some advice on how to associate with Artoria, since the saber is its Sundeer. Alone with her master, the goth girl seemed to turn into a blushing mess due to her embarrassment. Medea teased the poor knight a lot and crushed her pride with the outfit she kept for the fashion show. Scathach, the servant of the Grimory ruler, had a stronger relationship since the two were the same in a way. They bonded over their knowledge, experiences in war, and learning about their respective cultures. Scathach enjoyed being around the mature devil and even asked for some advice and teasing Issei. The Lancer seemed to enjoy messing with her master, which led to Issei developing a sixth sense for when the Lancer was up to something. And again, Venelana didn't have room to talk since she enjoyed messing with the boy, which led to the most adorable reactions. Medea or Artoria took their master away from the perverted cougars. Semiramis had a wonderful relationship with Issei since Semiramis, as the servant, tended to Issei's wounds and helped him control his new abilities. Her assistance was much more substantial for Issei's survival after going through a ritual of poison. Venelana was truly amazed by the progress Issei had made in the last month. She hadn't witnessed such growth in a human, no less. He may live up to the mantle as the heroes of old did. His sacred gear and deepening connection to the Avenger card almost guaranteed it. But it also meant a bigger target on his back by the wider supernatural world. Issei had been working hard to get used to not only his magic training, but also his physical training. Leonidas and Scathach were not pushovers, both were famed but brutal teachers of warriors. They broke his body so many times that he was practically rebuilt stronger than before. Venelana giggled at the memory before looking over the paperwork that was on her desk. She wanted to make sure that the work was done before she took Issei and the others to the Yaokai faction. This would give Issei more experience interacting with Kunu and possibly the other Yaokai. It would help the boy in developing his diplomacy skills. There was also the problem of the wild-mannered Susanoo wanting to clash with Issei and the other servants that followed Issei. I can't wait to see his reaction when he wants to pet Kunu's tails, Venelina muttered under her breath. He won't say it, but he has a soft spot for cute animals like those cats he enjoys playing with within the park. She recalled the newest member of the group being the archer of the servants. I do hope she doesn't try to kill Issei after he rubbed her ears and made her feel so flustered she tried to shoot him, Venelana said. The archer was similar to Artoria in a way, but it was due to her past with Artemis and not being around men for most of her life. I said I was sorry already, Atalanta. What more do you want from me? Issei asked as he fired his rifle once more at the moving targets. Atalanta's tail snapped back at him before she replied. Why don't you let me shoot you, and we'll call it even. Atalanta growled at Issei, while the master rolled his eyes at the stubborn cat before shooting the last of the targets. He turned to see Atalanta glaring a hole in his head before sighing once more and walking towards her, which made her leap up onto one of the pillars hissing at him. Stay away from me, you pervert. For the last time. It was an accident. Says the one who assaulted me. I rubbed your ears cause I thought you were cosplaying. Who expects an archer that was part of Artemis's group to be part cat? Says the boy who has the power to summon anything he desires due to his sacred gear. Issei opened his mouth once more, but stopped as he registered what she said before nodding. Touché. Their banter soon ended when Artoria walked towards her master with her helmet on and readied her sword. Master? Artoria spoke. It's time to take you for combat training. You are improving in your skills as a spearman, but I wish to push you to become more skilled in combat, whether you wield a weapon or not or even use magic. Issei nodded before Atalanta watched him leave to head to the arena with the Tyrant of Knights. Once, for sure, she couldn't hear him anymore, she left the pillar she was on and headed towards the garden. There, she saw Semiramis sitting on a bench and reading a book. The queen looked up at the archer and smiled at her. Ah, Atalanta. I'm surprised to see you here in my garden. Semiramis said. You spend most of your time in target practice. Atalanta scowled at the Assyrian queen. This was not the first time the two had met each other. Oddly enough, as soon as Atalanta was summoned, a new memory of a time before this was given to them. In another world, there was a once greater Grail war. A massive ritual consisting of 14 servants divided into two factions. Atalanta was summoned as an archer, with Semiramis serving as an assassin in the same faction. Their relationship was cordial, but Atalanta was better off keeping an eye on the poisonous queen. Besides, there were other memories she'd rather forget. The all-consuming towards ruler. The feel of Ryder's spear impaling her. The drip of blood from her arrows. The sad smile on his face. Achilles' arm held her close as they were disappearing back to the throne. Atalanta's fists clenched tightly as she banished the memory. You're not wrong. However, I would like to ask for your personal opinion. Semiramis gave the archer a knowing look. It's about Issei, yes. Indeed. I can't seem to wrap my head around him. He is not like the homunculus who followed Jean, Atalanta said. On the other hand, she still had lingering loathing for her old master ruler Cotamund and the pink-haired rider, who was more an annoyance than a real fighter. Well, you're not wrong, however, I can see Issei for who he is, and thanks to our connection with him, I can see his true self, Semiramis said as she looked up from her book and replied to her. Issei Haidu is an interesting person since he isn't like other mages who desire the Grailer power, but instead wishes to become a hero to protect his home and family. It was a dream he shared with his childhood friend a long time ago, but sadly, he almost gave up on that dream before that troll gave him the cards to summon us. Atalanta nodded as she could tell that Issei wasn't a bad person. Still, she has her issues with men, especially after hearing about her mother's past lover, Orion, the one who tricked her into almost losing a race when using a golden apple, which was the reason she despised the fruits. Indeed. Issei is a kind person who wears his heart on his sleeve, but he is so open with this desire to be harem king. Atalanta said with a curl of her dot. Issei is truly an amusing person, but his smile hides the pain of betrayal, Semiramis said. Does that remind you of anyone? Atalanta nodded wordlessly. Her hands twitched as memories of her life were brought to the forefront. Along with knowledge from the throne of heroes, she was not a stranger to betrayal. Artemis may hate all men except for male children. She loved all children, innocent as they were. However, she would never stoop so low as to pretend to like someone before stabbing them in the heart. Any wicked person willing to play with others' hearts would meet one of her arrows through their skull. I hope I never see her because if I do see her, then I'll gladly put an arrow in her head and feast on her flesh, Atalanta snarled. Her eyes glowed brightly before her aura became dark purple. Idly, Atalanta reached for the pelt of the Caledonian boar. A hand was placed on her head and brought her out of her dark thoughts. Calm down, Semiramis spoke sternly as a queen flexing her authority. I'm sure Issei will be able to deal with her when the time comes, but before that time does come, we'll help him become stronger, Semiramis said as the ground began to shake until Atalanta's ears perked up at the sound. Sounds like Issei is going all out against the three of them. Idiot trying to fight 3 servants. He's begging to be killed. Don't worry, Archer, Semiramis placated. He's more than capable of defending himself, and his new body is helping his healing factor keep up with the others. I only worry about the damage I'll have to repair once his training is over. Meanwhile, in said arena. Ha! Issei yelled as he slammed a left hook into Leonida's shield. The great gong-like sound echoed throughout, but the shielder did not budge. The servant smirked as Issei then dodged Scathach's spear. That left him open as Artoria tried with her sword poised to strike him in the middle of his maneuver. Issei's shadow became a massive fist that punched her stomach, successfully getting Saber to back off. Issei backed away to get some breathing room until Leonidas came charging back at him. He reacted in time to the massive fist to shield his body. But it was a window for the god killer to exploit. Not good enough. Scathach shouted as her spear pierced through the hand. It was just enough to cushion the blow from a lethal level. Issei felt his body vibrate as he was slammed by the shield and sent flying into the arena wall. Issei coughed up a bit as he slowly got back up, his wound slowly closing. He then smirked in excitement despite the pain. I guess I'm really in my mind. Time to summon my servants. Issei said as he then let his aura explode. His body became covered in crimson armor and his spear glowed brightly until it had a purple hue. His left eye also changed to blood red as his hair also grew and became a combination of dark brown, purple, and blood red. Issei's aura then unleashed multiple animals like rats, wolves, bats, and even shadows themselves before he began to stab them all as his wounds began to close even faster. Using familiars is cheating. Artoria exclaimed. Issei smirked at her. All is fair in love and war. None was saying my familiars couldn't assist me. He had his shadow bring out a copy of himself in the same crimson armor, but where the eyes were crimson red. A floating array of sword constructs hung around it. Crimson Avatar. Attack. Issei shouted. The Avatar charged at Leonidas and began to attack him recklessly. Leonidas defended himself with ease, but left Issei free to act in a counterattack. Artoria was being forced to backpedal as she deflected rifle shots. Around Issei, multiple rifles were suspended in their counting to pelt Artoria to keep her distracted. With her busy, Issei rushed towards Scathach. Artoria idly thought of flexing more power into Excalibur to dispel the weaponry, but stayed her hand. She wanted to see how Issei's supposed rush attack was going to play out. It's the Avenger spirit influencing him, since I can tell that Oda Nobunaga and Issei are enjoying this fight as well, Scathach thought as she then readied her spear, which was becoming longer and sharper. In that case. Issei's smile became larger as his aura then increased in power, which forced the Avatar to leave Leonidas as the shielder left the arena, as he knew this would be the finishing blow. This spear is an embodiment of who I am. Swarm the 6 heavens and cover the whole world. And I am the epitome of the spear. A bold alternative. The P is reborn. Hijunhinge me demon king of the 1,000 heavens 10 ma'am. The two shouted as Scathach launched her spear, and Issei laughed while punching as his rifles fired upon the witch, causing a massive collision on both sides that devastated the whole arena. Leonidas looked at the damage and sighed as he saw Issei return to normal with a large grin on his face, while Scathach pulled herself out of the rubble. Artoria was rooted to her speed by digging her feet through the floor. I'm going to have to tell Semiramis that we'll need a new arena, Leonidas said as he then heard Medea come out of a teleportation circle and gasped at the damage. What the hell happened here? After the fight, Medea and Semiramis scolded Artoria, Scathach and Issei before letting them have lunch, which resulted in a spectacle for all of the people in the buffet. This food is amazing. I haven't anything like even during my era, Artoria said as she continued to gobble down her 20th plate. All while completely oblivious to the shocked audience in the restaurant. Issei was already preparing apologies to the staff. I'm sorry about her, Issei said. She's ravenous, so she doesn't know when to stop. Unfortunately, that wasn't the end of it. In one corner, Leonidas was slurring because Scathach swapped the king's drink for some beer, while Semiramis sighed at the trio. Atalanta, on the other hand, was feasting on her meal of fish with the zeal of a cat as her tail wagged. Medea was enjoying her strawberry cake, causing none of the fuss, unlike the other heroic spirits. She even used her magecraft to hide away Atlanta's animal features when the archer wasn't keeping them in check. Please mind your manners, Leonidas. We're in a restaurant and it's rude to the other patrons to cause such a stir. Semiramis said while sneaking a hand onto his shoulder. As alcohol could loosely be deemed a poison, it took some finesse to manipulate it within the Lancer by increasing its potency. Her efforts were rewarded with Leonidas passing out. Issei returned with a defeated expression. We're seriously going to lose a lot of money because of her massive stomach, Issei said as he looked at his empty wallet. Semiramis comforted him with a pat on the back. There. We'll be able to get through this, master. It's not your fault that Saber turns into a greedy pig and eats everything on her plate with the manners of a barbarian. Artoria was shocked by the comparison before slamming her hands on the table in outrage. Scathach was stifling her laughter, while Medea couldn't help but be amused by the scene before her eyes. Eating the food of another land is the best way to understand the people better, Saber proclaimed. Isn't that right, Atalanta? Don't drag me into this, Atalanta said as she was enjoying her second serving of fish. Semiramis rolled her eyes. Oh, please. You'll say anything as an excuse to shove food into your bottomless pit of a stomach. Meanwhile, some of us who are actual rulers know how to eat in a public place and not embarrass our entourage to the public. She began to feed Issei some of her meal with the grace of a royal. The Magus enjoyed the gesture until Artoria scooted over in jealousy. Master, you should have some more meat to build your muscles, Artoria said as she shoved an offering into his mouth before he could answer. He choked on the morsel from the sudden invasion into his orifice. A harder hit from Semiramis, editor's note. E-rank strength is allegedly 10 times more than peak human form, gave him back his breath. The poison master shook her head in disappointment while Artoria felt like she was going to be scolded again. Issei stopped coughing and patted her snowy hair, making Artoria blush a bit before he smiled at her. It's okay, Artoria, Issei forgave. Just don't shove food into my mouth next time. Saber nodded and began to enjoy being fed cake. Atalanta frowned at the pair but went back to her meal without a word. Semiramis, Scathach and Medea laughed at the sight since they hadn't enjoyed something like this in a long time, while Leonidas slowly opened his eyes and smirked at his brother. You are a lucky brat, Leonidas said as he ate his meal. I'm really looking forward to this new life. Nothing beats a bath after a day of training and a wonderful meal, Artoria said as she enjoyed the effects of the pool. Is there anything you do know how to do besides training, fighting, eating, and sleeping? Semiramis asked as she sat away from the saber until Artoria fired back at the Poison Queen. An ugly scowl married Artoria's face. At least I can fight, unlike you, who would resort to poison. I know how to assist my master in battle. What can you do? Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's not like I have a powerful fortress that can easily take out entire armies, keep the enemies out of the gardens, create a massive army of dragon-tooth soldiers, and provide a base of operations for my master and his future faction members. Still, it's probably nothing to you, Semiramis said coyly. Should I mention my pet phantasmal beasts I have within my castle? Bride Artoria Pendragon. Fallen King of Britain. Say that again. I dare you. What's wrong? Semiramis pressed on. Upset because I revealed your true name and past. Although, how's it you were summoned in this state? Where is this perfect king I was told about? All I see is a cruel tyrant whose brutality is her blade. Whatever belief you instilled in the Saxons to make you like this, I applaud. I wonder, how would your witch of a sister react seeing you like this? Artoria was about to let loose on the assassin until a hand hit the top of her head, making her turn to see Medea scolding the two. That's enough out of you both, Medea said. Semiramis, it's unbefitting of a ruler to mock our fellow servant. Issei accepts her, and so should you. She's a part of our team whether you like it or not. Don't let her bossy attitude get to you, Saber, Medea said. That's just how she is with newcomers. Artoria grumbled as she allowed Excalibur to disperse into motes of light. She wasn't like that with Atalanta. That's because Semiramis knows me, and I don't fall victim to her games like you, Atalanta said as she sighed and soaked in the bath while Venelana joined them. Now apologize and shake hands, Medea said. Grumbling again, Artoria extended her hand, and Semiramis accepted. It didn't help Saber's wanting to punch an assassin's smug face. Now so you two can make up. Issei shouted, sporting a blush around his cheeks. Leonidas, did you just give Issei alcohol? Exclaimed Medea. Just a little, Leonidas responded casually. The boy's a lightweight. Boys, Venelana said, shaking her head. Has anyone seen Scathach? Atalanta wondered. I was sure she was right here with us before we got into the hot spring. A shadowy figure emerged from behind Atalanta, and when the archer turned around, she only saw a skull mask. AHHH. Do you regret what you did to Atalanta in the bath, Scathach? Issei scolded. Scathach pouted while Atalanta was glaring daggers from a corner. The others decided to retire for the night as Issei got into his pajamas before seeing Venelana preparing a teleportation circle. You said there would be a surprise for us tomorrow, yes? Issei asked. Would you tell me what it is? Venelana giggled. You'll just have to find out tomorrow. Not even if I give you, Issei asked coyly. Venelana was surprised by this before smiling, thinking Issei was caving into wanting a more intimate relationship with her. Well, it depends on how well he is, Venelana whispered huskily. She hugged Issei close to her body before closing her eyes and leaning to take his dot instead, she felt something sweet touch them. She snapped her eyes open to see Issei give her a chocolate instead of a real one. Venelana was so shocked she almost missed the smug look on his face. If you want them, you'll have to earn it. Night, Venelana. Issei said as he held her left cheek, letting him go from her arms before he left Venelana, teleporting back to her home before touching her and recalling the teasing smile before a smile of her touch appeared on her dot. Oh, I am so going to enjoy getting back at him when we enter Kyoto tomorrow, Venelana vowed. Meanwhile, in Kyoto. So her training isn't going so well? Yusaka asked. Amaterasu nodded. Indeed. Unfortunately, Kunu lacks control over her magic since she either puts too much or too little in her spells. Susanoo is excellent at helping her fight her opponents with power, but she must learn control over her powers to be careful of others around her. I do hope these guests will be able to help Kunu with her training. Yusaka nodded, thinking back on her daughter's training. Kunu is excellent in combat, but needs help controlling her power when using her fire or ice magic. She is hoping that Venelana's pupil can help her further. I believe they can, Yusaka said. Now, we must prepare for their arrival. I have a hunch tomorrow will be quite eventful. Amaterasu then left the room in a flash of light. Now alone, Yusaka's thoughts diverged to the incident with Kunu and the hero faction. A frown marred her face before sighing to herself. I do hope that we are prepared for whatever the hero faction throws at us, Yusaka said as she mentally prepared herself for the upcoming war. Welcome to my humble abode. Venelana said, introducing her summer house to the heroic spirits and Issei, who knew that Venelana was rich, but this was freaking huge that was even bigger than a mansion. This morning, Venelana told the group that she wanted to take them to Kyoto as part of Issei's summer vacation, since it would be a wonderful opportunity for him and the others to see Kyoto and visit some of her friends who lived there. Venelana even explained that they would be staying at a summer house she has in Kyoto, which she uses when taking a break from work at both the school and the underworld. So, during the tour, the group was amazed by both the interior and exterior, since Venelana Gremory's summer house in Kyoto was a charming blend of traditional Japanese architecture and modern luxury. Nestled amidst lush greenery, the house features a minimalist design with sliding papered doors, tatami mat floors, and elegant wooden furnishings. The exterior was adorned with a small garden filled with vibrant flowers and carefully trimmed bonsai trees. A winding stone path leads to the entrance, where a small wooden gate welcomes visitors into the tranquil retreat. There was even a training arena outside, where Leonidas and Artoria were excited to test out their archery skills, and Atalanta was excited when she found targets set up for her. Inside, the main living area is spacious yet cozy, with large windows that allow plenty of natural light to filter in. A traditional tea ceremony room offers a serene space for meditation and relaxation. Semiramis has enjoyed this since back in Kuo town, and Issei even told her about a nice tea shop that was a bit old-fashioned. Still, the tea and customer service were amazing, so when Issei took her there for a small date, Semiramis fell in love with the atmosphere, since it was perfect with just her master, and none of the annoying others to interfere with the moment. The kitchen is compact but fully equipped with state-of-the-art appliances, perfect for preparing light meals and refreshing drinks during the hot summer months. Issei and Leonidas had to stop Artoria from ransacking the fridge. Artoria was so captivated by the smells of the delicious food that she wanted to taste a sample of it before Issei and Leonidas stopped her and dragged the crying saber away from the food just out of her reach. Much to the amusement of the others as they watched the King of Britain try to beg Issei with puppy eyes, which almost worked if not for Artoria's stomach growling. The master bedroom was simple yet inviting. It had a comfortable futon laid out on the tatami floor and sliding doors that opened onto a private patio overlooking a serene koi pond. Venelana personally tried to get Issei to join her by saying he'd be staying with her until Medea and Artoria stopped her from corrupting Issei even more, while Scottish was pouting, saying she wanted to join in the fun, making the caster and saber of the group keep their master away from the cougars. Outside, a wooden deck provides the ideal spot for al fresco dining or simply soaking up the sun. A traditional Japanese hot tub, nestled in a secluded corner of the garden, offers the ultimate relaxation experience. Atalanta loved this even more as she was tempted to take a catnap and enjoy the sun warming her body. Overall, Venelana Gremory's summer house is a peaceful sanctuary where she can escape the hustle and bustle of city life and immerse herself in the beauty of nature. Okay, I am definitely out of my element here. Why exactly did you bring us to a massive palace? Issei asked, and Venelana replied to him. Actually, this is the smallest of the 5 summer houses I have. It's a bit cramped here, but I'm sure we can deal with it. Venelana said with the ones who were not used to large amounts of luxuries before Issei asked with a tone of disbelief. This is your smallest summer house? This one? Yep. Now, let's unpack before my friends arrive since we'll be joining them for brunch, so we have 2 hours to prepare. Venelana said that before Issei and the group got unpacked, they also made a sleeping chart to indicate who'd be sleeping with whom. Medea and Artoria wanted to snuggle with Issei, while Leonidas didn't mind rooming with his little brother. The group decided to settle the argument by drawing straws, which resulted in the sleeping chart. Best bedroom 1. Leonidas and Issei. Best bedroom 2. Medea and Atalanta. Best bedroom 3. Artoria and Semiramis. Best bedroom 4. Scathach. Main bedroom. Venelana. So the guys went to unpack, which was easy since Issei only brought a medium-sized suitcase from home. At the same time, Semiramis was able to bring her fortress to Kyoto and hid it with an invisibility spell. Leonidas liked the view of the city while Issei looked over his daggers, which Medea and Semiramis had made for him. They had a piece of his magic in them, and his poisonous blood coated the blades. Issei liked the idea of having his weapon. Granted, he had a spear given to him by Scathach or the rifle given to him by Avenger, but it feels like he has his unique weapon created for him, thanks to the idea he had. With a far-reaching weapon, he was able to use his magic on his enemies while poisoning them. Issei's blood after the ritual was poisonous but not so toxic. It harmed those who touched him like another assassin that Semiramis told him about back in the Throne of Heroes. Issei also enjoyed the skeleton mask that Scottish used to scare Atalanta in the bath yesterday, but this gave Issei an idea. Thanks to the Annihilation Maker, he had a special cloak made for him that allowed his body to be cloaked in darkness so he couldn't be seen or detected by others. The cloak also kept his weapons hidden within a dimensional pocket that held not just his rifles and spear, but also his many daggers that were crafted for him. Semiramis joked that Issei could possibly become an assassin in the Throne of Heroes by the way he dressed, which wasn't a bad idea, since what Issei knew about heroes in comics is that sometimes stealth is an important skill to have in one's arsenal. So he asked Semiramis to teach him how to be an assassin should the time come when Issei needed to gather information. Semiramis liked this plan, so when Issei was in training with either Atalanta, Leonidas, Artoria or Scathach, the assassin of the group was training Issei in the art of assassination. Granted, Semiramis wasn't a fighter like the others since she relied on her poison and fortress to fight. However, she was still able to teach Issei how to fight with daggers and guns, use the shadows to his advantage, strike the enemy's weak spots, human anatomy, and more. So you brought your knives with you? Leonidas asked, breaking Issei out of his train of thought before Issei smiled at his brother. Don't worry about Leo. I'm just making sure that my weapons are ready for training, since I have a feeling I'll be going through some tougher training. Issei said before the two got dressed in casual but good attire, while the others were getting accustomed to their new sleeping arrangements. You stay on your side of the room, assassin. Artoria said, placing her futon near the window to escape should the poison mistress try anything. However, Semiramis honestly didn't care as she was brushing her hair in the mirror. I really don't care. Just choose a side and get ready since you only have one chance for a good first impression. Semiramis said before smiling at her beauty and using some tick to make her pop out, which would not only make her master want to taste them, but also stand out from the other older women. Artoria honestly didn't care about her attire since she was used to dressing up like a boy back in Britain. So, she decided to go with business casual, smiling at her figure, while Semiramis rolled her eyes at the king's lack of fashion. If you're trying to turn Issei off, then you're doing a good job since you finally dressed the way you act. And what is that supposed to mean? Oh, it's nothing, Miss Female Impersonator. I feel sad that Issei has such a brutish saber who acts more like a man than a woman. I don't need makeup to attract my master's attention. Oh really? Then why does he look at Medium or me? What about Venelana or Scathach? He hardly looks your way since I wouldn't date a wannabe woman than an actual ruler. Semiramis said, making Artoria look at her attire. She then looked at her reflection and noticed how Issei barely looked her way since she was mostly dressed in her armor and casual clothes. This made Artoria ponder whether Issei actually saw her as a woman or just a saber. Oh, come on, Atalanta. I think this looks great on you. Medea shouted as she tried to get Atalanta in a dress, making the archer hiss at her while squirming out of her reach. Stay away from me, you pervert. Oh, please. Artoria doesn't mind the dresses she wears. Because you force her into them. Scathach, on the other hand, was smiling as she enjoyed the room to herself while sipping some tea. You know, after being around them for just a month, it's nice having my own space, though it would be nice if Issei were here to have some tea with me. Scathach said before following Semiramis and Issei to their tea shop, recalling Issei's love of a special tea that made the stress melt away. Maybe I can get some of that tea Issei likes here and invite him here to spend some time with me. Scathach said before popping chocolate in her mouth and at the taste that melted on her tongue. Meanwhile, with Princess Kunu. But I don't want to wear these annoying clothes. Kunu pouted. She didn't know why her mother was so insistent that she wear her traditional kimono, even though she was told they'd be having guests that day. It's because it's to greet our guests. Now stop your struggles, or else I'll ask Amaterasu to do it for you. Yusaka scolded Kunu, making her give in as her mother brushed her hair and let it flow freely. Kunu sighed since she was hoping to do some more training with Susanoo, but her mother told her that this was important, so she had to endure this annoyance until she could finally be free. Kunu sighed as she looked at herself in the mirror and saw the princess wardrobe on her body. Granted, she did like the clothes, but she hated how she wasn't able to make any other friends when she was a child. Many times, children were either afraid of her because of the royal guards or merely because she was a princess. Kunu then used her frustrations to continue fighting, which was a great way to let out some of the stress in her body. Eventually, time passed by, and Kunu was now standing in the throne room with her golden blonde hair tied in a ponytail. She also had her 9 golden fox tails and matching ears out while looking at her attire. She was wearing a traditional Maiko outfit and a tall jetta with a white tabi. The sleeves of her haori feature a giant red star-shaped pentagram, surrounded by 5 smaller pentagrams in between the points. A messenger then appeared at the throne room before introducing Venelana Gremory, who was wearing a wonderful dress that showed her beauty and grace. Presenting Venelana Gremory and company, the messenger said. Venelana curtsied to Yusaka, who smiled at her friend before speaking to them. It's to see you again, Venelana. And I take it that these are your associates. Yusaka asked with Venelana nodding and introducing the servants first before Issei, who surprised Kunu by how he cleaned up since Issei was wearing his Avenger clothes, since it suited the meeting royalty aspect and looked professional. Kunu then blushed, seeing his face as well as his smile when he looked her way, making Kunu's blush darker before she invited Issei to sit next to her, making Yusaka look at Kunu in surprise before hiding a smirk as she saw her daughter's eyes look at Issei before the two sat next to each other, with Issei and Kunu chatting about some of the things they liked and vice versa. Especially since Issei mentioned how much he liked cute animals like cat and dogs, especially this nice little fox that lived in an abandoned church before it passed away. Kunu then revealed her tails to Issei and said that Issei could touch them if he'd like, but he should be gentle with them. Issei nodded as he gently touched the fur and felt how soft it was before commenting on how she must be taking wonderful care of her tails. This made Kunu blush since she loved how gentle Issei was with her tails. Yusaka smirked at the sight and Issei accidentally touched the tip of her tail, causing Kunu to flinch a bit. Issei apologized for being rude, but Kunu reassured him that she was fine, she was just not used to being touched in that area. Issei and Kunu then quieted down a bit as they continued to eat breakfast, with Leonidas flashing Issei a thumbs up. Her master's attraction amused Semiramis to royalty, and she could see the two of them being friends and possibly lovers. It was wonderful of you to have us join you, Lady Yusaka, but how exactly do you and Venelana know each other so well? I thought the relationship between the factions was a bit neutral, given the circumstances of the biblical faction. Issei said that Yusaka didn't mind as she explained that she and Venelana were good friends and how she comforted Venelana after the Great War when Venelana lost not just her husband but nearly joined him in her depressed state. Issei recalled how Venelana was when they first met and how she wanted to show him that the path he would walk down was a dangerous one, especially since Issei had already embraced death before being given his second chance. Kunu was shocked by this as well, since she knew her mother had a friend in the devil faction but wasn't sure why. Then, she recalled how her mother was saddened when her husband, Kunu's father, passed away while protecting them until Venelana and her late husband helped her as well. After breakfast with the group, Venelana introduced the Shinto gods, Susanoo, Tsukiyomi and Amaterasu, to the heroic spirits, which excited Susanoo and Kunu. Yusaka then told Kunu that she would be training with Amaterasu, which made Kunu pout before nodding in agreement with her mother. Issei then reassures her that he would be happy to see her magic when she's done training. This made Kunu skip a step, as she was happy to have a friend show off her magic, too, instead of just the teachers. Issei was still amazed when looking at the gods, since the stories about them hardly did them justice. Tsukiyomi, the god of the moon, was a youthful-looking man clad in a black kimono with silver accents in the form of threads. His eyes were slightly slanted and closed most of the way, making it impossible to discern their color, lest one were uncomfortably close to him. His nose was straight and pointed, his chin held in a constant half-frown, all of this on a slightly long face with a pointed chin. His height was the average for a Japanese man in their early 20s, his build was slim, with narrow shoulders, and his long brown hair was done up in a top knot. All of these traits together gave him the stereotypical Bishounen, pretty boy, look. As for Susanoo, he was a large man, much taller than average by standing at a good 6'1", with broad shoulders and a noticeably muscled build, even under his seafoam green kimono, with aquamarine-colored accents in the form of crashing waves. His blue eyes were big and round, his nose slightly crooked and thick, and he sported a thick beard and mustache combo, covering his mouth and his broad, square-shaped jaw, both in the same russet color as his short, windswept-looking hair. His skin was sunburnt in the same way as a fisherman's, yet put together with the rest of his look, it gave him an attractive, if austere, appearance. And finally, Amaterasu was a very beautiful woman. With her short, slim build, clothed in a white silk kimono with golden trim and accents in the form of flames, silk smooth, raven black hair going down to her shoulders and a cut brown-colored almond-shaped eyes, a small dainty nose, and a pair of slightly plum-colored and a ruby red that contrasted her porcelain-colored pale skin greatly, and her eyebrows cut in a thick but short rounded shape, the woman could be said to be the epitome of the traditional Japanese princess. Except for her full, soft-looking, back-achingly large breasts, which, if one were to measure them, would be classified as E-cups. Amazing, Issei said without thinking, making Susanoo smirk at the kid. So you're the one that Venelana talked about, huh? Susanoo said as he looked at the kid before smirking. You got some strength, but let's see how tough you really are. Susanoo said before picking Issei up as if he were a child, until Tsukiyomi grabbed Issei away from his brother before speaking to him. I believe we should test him against a person who is stronger than humans and not someone who will kill him after a single punch. Oh, please, Susanoo said. Would one of those spiders be a better choice to spar with the kid? It'll allow us to gauge his skills. Unless any of you have a problem with Issei fighting one of my royal guard soldiers. Tsukiyomi asked, with the servants not looking amused or threatened before Leonidas spoke for them. It's not our choice but little bro's choice, Leonidas said before looking at Issei. Is this something you're okay with? Yes, Issei said, happy to demonstrate his skills for the gods, especially since he could tell that Tsukiyomi had a bit of a prideful side, thinking that humans were weak. If what he read about Susanoo was true, then Susanoo was similar to Ares in battle since the two loved to fight strong opponents. Tsukiyomi smiled at this as he took Issei to a training arena where there was an arena for yokai to train, and Semiramis had to admit that she was impressed by the layout since it had many traps and good places for an opponent to attack an unsuspecting enemy. Issei then walked with Tsukiyomi to the rafters, which seemed to be a good place for an assassin to kill their targets under the cover of the night. My personal assassin will be testing you to see what you're capable of. Is that okay with you, Issei? Tsukiyomi asked as Issei summoned his cloak and placed his skull mask on his face as he took on his assassin form, thanks to the Annihilation Maker. Issei smirked at the yokai as he brandished a knife and was ready to deal with his opponent. The spider smiled as I eyed his appearance, a young adult, likely in their low 20s, wearing nothing less than a dark blue kimono. The man was about the same height as Issei, though he was of a slighter build, having narrower shoulders and an overall less toned build. He also had black fuzz in place of skin, 6 blood-red eyes spread around his face, no nose, and a very large, very sharp-looking pair of pincers in place of a mouth. Said pincers gleamed with a light green tint, and the upper part of them moved as the yokai spoke. Well, now, human, let's see how strong you really are, the yokai said as Tsukiyomi teleported out of the sparring room, which was the signal as the spider lunged out at the assassin. Issei saw this and ducked underneath the yokai before high-kicking the spider, which was well aimed at the target. The spider just took the kick like a champ before the yokai recovered in midair. After recovering, he caught himself on a wall with the palm of his hand, sticking to it before swinging his body so that his feet landed on the wall as well, giving him stability, while placing his free hand atop his head, fighting back the disorientation from the hit of the person he was currently glaring at. Issei was surprised by this as he began to pull out a black semi-automatic magnum pistol that he had made thanks to watching an anime with Semiramis that had a vampire in it. Issei created his version of it, but this time, he was able to increase the magazine capacity to 8 bullets while still weighing 6 kilograms when loaded. However, the bullets that were loaded in the gun were special as Issei took aim and fired one of the rounds at the yokai. The yokai scoffed at the boy as he raised his arm to block the shot, but as soon as the bullet hit his arm, the bones inside of his left arm broke and his arm humerus shattered as he felt his arm snap within. Ah! The yokai shouted, unable to believe what had happened to his arm until he began to look at the boy in fear. Issei took careful aim with his gun and fired 3 more rounds, which made the yokai flee into the shadows as he dodged them, thanks to his speed. Issei stopped, as he didn't want to waste his remaining bullets until he breathed heavily. He then closed his eyes and, thanks to his training, increased all of his senses. An assassin always relies on more than their weapons. They rely on their skills and how to utilize their resources, as well as using their instincts. Issei said in his mind while recalling the words of Semiramis while listening to him. The yokai is, without a doubt, a spider. Yokai, given the way he is able to stick to the wall and has multiple eyes similar to a spider as well as the pincers. He knows that my bullets can break his arm. I'll have to thank Semiramis as well as Medea for giving me these special bullets. Issei said in his mind, grateful for the bullets before he began to hear the running that the yokai was doing, trying to throw Issei off, but the assassin wasn't easily fooled. Issei pulled out a set of 3 daggers and smiled to himself as he heard the running cease before turning around and throwing them at the spider. However, the girl behind him hit Issei in the stomach and forced him to stop. Ah! Issei gasped as he then felt many webs begin to coat his body, which made it very difficult for Issei to move in until he looked to see that the yokai was more of a spider due to the 4 spindly limbs, segmented into 3 parts by round joints and tipped with sharp dagger-length hook-like spines, 2 of the limbs resting along the shoulder blades. And the lower 2 being placed each on either side of the lower back region, all 4 of them supporting the smirking foe. The yokai clicking laugh filled the area, the sound bouncing off from the various obstacles in a particularly eerie manner before the mouth pincers started moving. I see that you have understood. Each of these limbs is much faster, stronger, and more resilient than the rest of my body, each of them easily capable of moving fast enough to deflect bullets, hitting strong enough to break stone, and tipped with claws sharp enough to punch through steel. Now that they're out, there's no way you will survive. You are already dead. The spider monologues while Issei looks up to see many girders fall from the arena. Still, to the yokai's surprise, Issei didn't show any fear, he gave a deadly smile and closed his eyes until the girders covered Issei. Boom. A massive dust cloud covered the area, the spider felt a sigh of relief and left him. He began to leave the arena and called his master to tell him the results of the battle. Pick that wasn't a normal human. He was much too skilled in his craft to be called a human. But that does not matter since I've triumphed. It's the natural order of things, even if it was closer than I'd like. The spider guy let out a sigh as he allowed himself to flop back first onto the ground before breathing out. When Lord Tsukiyomi hears about this, he's going to up my training again. I'll go ahead and prepare a healer to tend to the boy's injuries. No need to stay. Tsukiyomi said before Semiramis began to laugh while hiding it behind her hand. Is there something wrong, Lady Semiramis? Yusaka asked, and Semiramis continued to laugh until she replied to the Yokai Queen. It's nothing, but your moon god actually thinks Issei is defeated. I was honestly amused by how blind your god is if he can't even see that the fight is going to end soon, but not in his favor. Semiramis said before Leonidas spoke. She's right. Issei's tougher than you think, plus even when he couldn't sleep, Issei continued his training and learned how to better use his sacred gear, along with his magic. Trust me when I say that Issei will begin to take this more seriously, now that he knows everything about his opponent, Leonidas said before the Shinto faction, and Venelana looked to see the spider Yokai was shocked as a voice replied to his comment. Oh really? Then, I should no longer hold back against you. The spider's head snapped towards the downed girders, his heart thumping heavily as his 6 eyes strained heavily to discern the slightest bit of movement. After several seconds of staring, the spider finally allowed the tension to drain out of his body at the confirmed lack of movement. This fight really screwed me up more than I expected. And I can even hear the fear you held towards me in those words. How interesting. Issei's voice said as one of the sharp limbs shot behind him hard enough to release a mild shock wave, the hook tip positioned in a way to punch through the target. Only for Issei to effortlessly stop it just inches away from his face. The shock wave of the sudden halting of the attack caused his hair to blow back and his clothes to rustle. Giving the downed enemy an unconcerned look, Issei spoke in an interesting tone. I'll admit. Despite your holier-than-thou attitude towards humans, you're a very strong Yokai who's good at the assassination. A mid-tier fighter, as far as close combat goes, along with a diverse set of skills and the brains to use them well, choosing to engage in a way that is most advantageous to you, and to change the field as soon as you felt it to be unfavorable to you. Also, using your web sparingly for purposes of immobilizing me at specific times that would allow you to get a critical hit in, with an exception for what you believe to be a killing blow, making full usage of the terrain around you to facilitate your fighting style, and keeping your extra limbs hidden, using yourself as a feint in order to strike from the blind spot using your spider limbs. Plus, I'm sure that there's some hidden skill, ability, or technique that you have up your sleeve that you would have usually pulled out to finish the fight had I given you the time to use it. With all of those things together, you should be capable of matching and maybe even overwhelming a high-tier opponent in a one-on-one fight. Issei said in a way that he was complimenting his opponent until his eyes narrowed at him and spoke as Issei pulled out his pistol that he used before. Too bad I was your enemy this time around. The gulf between the two of us was just too big for someone with your attitude to cross. Issei said before he released the limb that he was holding, which speedily retreated towards its owner, joining the other 3 in their defensive positions around their owner. The 4 of them were pointed towards Issei, but the assassin didn't show any fear as he looked at him. Pulling himself back together, the spider guy used his limbs to shakily get himself back to his feet, allowing the lower one to support his weight, while his upper ones were pointed towards Issei. Stop ing with me. You're just human. You're not supposed to be able to match me. You are meant to be below me in all aspects. The Yokai looked back at all the fallen girders, his pincers trembling with a combination of anger, frustration, and fear as he raised a finger toward Issei and yelled out. You even got buried in all of that. You were supposed to be dead. How did you even survive that? Oh, that. Well, are you really sure that you killed Issei Haidu? Issei asked with a sinister smile before holding up a bloody and mangled corpse that looked just like Issei's body, which shocked the Shinto members and Yokai until the body vanished into nothingness. Rule 1 of being an assassin. Always have a backup plan for dealing with any possible outcome. Issei said that before appearing to smile at him with a wide grin, his shadow began to expand, and his cloak began to fuse with his body, making him appear as a literal shadow with multiple eyes on his body. The Yokai was terrified as his eyes widened. Multiple eyes appeared around him, and the sound of many creatures, including wolves, crows, bugs, and snakes, appeared from the shadows. Now then, little spider, I think it's time to educate you on what this human is capable of. Issei said that before the spider, Yokai was terrified seeing the being in front of him. He yelled in fear and tried to run away from the monster behind him, embedding a pair of daggers into the spider's back before he felt a force blast him back into the ground. Yah! The Yokai yelled as he felt his body become weaker and weaker with each passing minute before seeing Issei approach him. This made the Yokai terrified, so he tried to use his webs and legs to stop him. However, the legs were held back and his mouth shut before Issei walked towards him slowly. Fear entered the spider's heart with each second until Issei reached him and pulled his left back. Night-night. Those words were the last thing the spider heard before Issei Haidu, a mere human, knocked him out. A few minutes later. Atalanta yawned as she stretched her arms, seeing Semiramis next to her enjoying a cup of tea, watching the arena's repair, and speaking aloud. If what Medea said is true, then that means we have a new member we can recruit for our master's team. Are you sure it's not just because the girl has the same kind of power that Issei does? Atalanta asked before the assassin looked back at her. Part of the reason is that she has the same power as Issei, but I believe that she will be able to control her powers better thanks to the Shinto god Susanoo training her. By the way, where are the gods? Susanoo left when Issei knocked out the spider since he wanted to train Issei personally, with Artoria there to keep watch. Leonidas went to observe the training as well. Medea, on the other hand, is assisting little Kunu with her magic lessons. Medea believes that she can better help Kunu with her magic before Amaterasu helps with her control. And Skathich, Venelana and Yasaka. They seem to be hiding something, Semiramis said before Atalanta became invisible as she went to investigate on her own. With Medea and Kunu. Medea floated next to the girl, easily able to use foxfire and a few ice spells thanks to the talisman she used in battle. Medea was mostly using her defensive magic but was rather impressed with the small fox's abilities until they stopped after Kunu began to feel tired due to the magic she'd been using. Medea helped her up and offered her some water. Kunu gladly took the drink and chugged down the water as if she were coming out of a desert until Medea chuckled at the girl. I take it you haven't been pushed this far from your normal training, correct? Medea asked as Kunu was a bit embarrassed by the question but nodded nonetheless. Yes. I haven't trained this hard in quite some time, so it's the first time I've been tired of working out. Even though Susanoo trains me. Kunu said as she looked at her drink before smiling at Medea. But I'm really glad you were able to help me become stronger and truly push me past my limits. So thank you, Medea-sama. Kunu thanked as Medea was a bit embarrassed at the praise but still smiled in joy as she patted the girl's head. Medea wanted to understand who the girl was and what drove her to be a powerful person, so she decided to ask before continuing the training. Kunu, do you mind telling me how you came across that card and why a princess such as yourself is training? Medea asked and Kunu looked down, her ears dropping on her head. If I'm being honest. I was actually just a spoiled girl who was used to having others around me to protect me and such, but when I turned 15 just a few months ago, I had a strange dream when I was asleep that night. Kuno explained as she recalled the night that changed her life for the better. Flashback. Kyoto. Kunu was dreaming about herself standing in a field of sorts and saw that she was running away from someone or something that was chasing her down. It was then she looked back and saw many humans attack her. Kunu felt herself trying to reason with them and explained that she meant no ill will and that she was trying to help them. It was then that the Yaokai realized that the humans didn't care to hear her words as they only held hatred and fear towards the fox, calling her a demon that was disguising itself as a wife to their lord. Kunu then saw herself face off against the soldiers who had tried to harm her for many days. It was only when an enchanted arrow in her heart struck her that she woke up to find herself in her bedroom, which made her feel a sense of relief. For some reason, she saw a strange mirror that she had never seen before sitting next to her, as if it had been called to her side. Kunu didn't know why, but the mirror vanished as she then saw a small card in the place of the mirror. The princess picked it up as she saw the picture on the card transform into a pink-haired woman who had a heavenly figure and the same mirror beside her. Kunu felt a strong connection with the card until she muttered two words that changed her life forever. Install caster. Then flashback. It was that night that my body felt connected to that same person. I saw myself in that dream, and for the past few months, I've had visions of Fox's memories and felt my body slowly start to gain some of her physical traits, such as my hair gaining pink highlights at the tips of it. My magical power increased tremendously to the point where I could summon those talismans out of thin air, but the biggest change was that mirror that followed me around. Kunu explained that she summoned the mirror, which shocked Medea when she recognized it. To think that a fox princess was able to call upon the power of a witch, Medea said as she analyzed the mirror before nodding. I see. This is really her power. Medea then handed the mirror back to Kunu as Medea was excited about this recruit who would be an excellent member to join their faction should she accept the offer. Princess Kunu. I want to offer a proposal. Medea said. The princess was curious about the proposal until Medea began to explain the details of the proposal, which made the princess blush but smile at the ideas that were popping into her mind. Medea smiled at the girl, knowing she was willing to work with them when their trip to Kyoto ended. Again, Susanoo said as Issei threw another punch at the target. The impact behind the punch landed on the target and took out the center of it. Susanoo nodded at this before patting the boy's head after admiring the boy's magic. From what Media told me, your magic is called Impact, which can be very useful for taking down your enemies when they use barriers to shield themselves or when facing them. After watching the effects of those daggers you used in your flight earlier, I believe I know how I can help you get better at fighting. Susanoo said as he saw Issei play with the shadows around him until the storm god chuckled at the boy's antics before he patted his head. I'll help you learn how to better yourself in terms of hand-to-hand combat and learn other ways of using your impact magic. I focus more on the offensive than the defensive line, since that's more of my brother Tsukuyomi. Still, one thing you must know is that while your magic is impressive, you can't always rely on your magic or your sacred gear, since there are enemies who will easily figure out your weaknesses and then turn the tides of the battle against you. Susanoo said as he continued to explain what he'd be helping Issei with, while Alter Artoria and Leonidas watched their master as Issei nodded and took notes on what would be important to him. He knows he isn't invincible with his power. That's a sign that you understand your weaknesses. I can respect that since I've seen it many times when one allows their pride to get the best of them until they succumb to their death. Artoria said to herself as she watched the two begin their training. Issei was practicing hand-to-hand combat with Susanoo, which would help Issei utilize the full range and strength of his impact magic. Issei enjoyed this because he could feel the effects of his magic flow through his movements. A kick or punch, light or heavy, could send a powerful impact at God, as Susanoo was the target this time. The god of storms blocked the punches and kicks, however, he could feel the force behind each of them, which surprised him by force behind each of the attacks, since some were weaker than others. But what surprised him even more was how he began to use Annihilation Maker to summon shadow hands as they began to fire compressed air bullets from finger flicks, which impressed the god of storms as he began to block them with his other hand, which made him excited at the chance to understand the boy and his abilities better. Using his sacred gear to make multiple attacks to overwhelm the enemy so as he attacks the air bullets can not only strike the enemy but also cause the impact behind the bullets to become even deadlier. Very impressive. Can't wait to see what else this kid can do. Susanoo pondered as he enjoyed this sparring session with Issei. Susanoo then decided to see what else the boy could do, so he began to increase his speed. Issei was surprised by this before he commanded the shadow hands to keep firing the air bullets that Susanoo blocked with his other hand until Issei began planting his feet into the ground, readied his left fist and threw his punch. But what Susanoo didn't expect was the impact magic was stronger in his punches as he was pushed back a bit by the force behind it. This impressed Susanoo as he began using water droplets around him and fired them at Issei. Issei was shocked by this, so he commanded his shadow hands to surround his body to protect himself from the bullets. He decided to take this up a notch and stopped himself from using the Avenger card. No. I can't always rely on the Avenger card. I have to learn how to use my magic first before using Oda's power, Issei said, recalling that impact magic relies on the force around his actions. The flicks his shadow hands made were similar to those of a bullet from a gun, but when punching and kicking, they were similar to a powerful force pushing the opponent away. Issei then had an idea, using the shadow hands to cover his hands, before he sent a left hook that surprised Susanoo. Susanoo took the punch like a god, but when the impact magic kicked in, Susanoo felt a slight sense of both fear and interest as he looked at his chest to see that it had a small bruise from the full force of the impact magic. Before his regeneration healed, it was as if it was nothing, but the impact impressed Susanoo to see the boy's potential. Not bad, kid. You definitely understand your magic, but it's time to help you fully use that power. That means that I'll be teaching you how to use your body's full power and how to use your impact magic better. Are you ready, kid? Susanoo asked. Issei smiled and nodded, looking forward to this. You bet, Susanoo-sensei. Let's go. Issei cheered, and Alter Artoria couldn't help but smile at the boy's enthusiasm as she walked towards them with her sword out. Mind if I join in on this fun activity? Artoria said as she was glad that Susanoo and Issei nodded in agreement as the three began to spar and learn more about the other through combat. Meanwhile, with Venelana, Yusaka, and Scathach. So, are you serious about this? Venelana asked, looking at the body on the table, while Tsukuyomi nodded. I detected this man inside my barrier, and he tried to scout the perimeter. I believe that he is working with the Cows Brigade and the Hero faction. They tried to capture Princess Kunu a few months ago, but failed, with the princess defeating them. Tsukuyomi said as he revealed the symbol for the Hero faction, which made Yusaka clench her fists in rage before punching the corpse of the man in front of her until she looked at Venelana. Will you help us fight? They'll come here to try and kidnap my daughter and harm my people, but I intend to make them understand what happens when they think they can invade my home and family. Yusaka said as she almost gave into her yaokai side until Venelana calmed her down by hugging her, making Yusaka relax in her friend's arms. Hey, I understand that fear. I have children as well, and I would do anything to protect them, so trust me when I say that I'll help you. Venelana said, with Yusaka thanking her friend. Tsukiyomi was thankful that the Devil Princess was here to help and believed that they would be able to critically damage the hero faction's forces, especially if they had Issei and his comrades on their side. All in all, this month in Kyoto was going to be entertaining. Scene. Now, I know some were expecting Saint Martha to appear, but she'll be coming in before the battle. Here's a sneak peek into what's next in the Champions of Humanity. Who should I summon next? Issei pondered aloud as he was done with his training with Susanoo for the day, while Medea was making Alter Arturia wear many dresses, much to Saber's dismay as she knew full well that the caster was a closet pervert who seemed to enjoy treating her as if she was a doll. Oh, you are so cute in this gothic attire. It really complements your pale skin and amber eyes to make you seem like a real goth queen, Medea said as she took many photos of the Saber before changing her into a wedding dress, which made Arturia blush at the attire. Still, the caster squealed in joy as she then picked up Issei and put him in a suit before taking more pictures of the two together. What is this? Issei asked while he was now in Arturia's arms, which made Medea chuckle in amusement before replying to her master. Come on now. You must get into cosplay, or don't you think the outfit suit you and Arturia very well? Medea asked as many of the residents wolf whistled at the two of them until Issei and Arturia looked at each other before the Saber looked away with tints of pink on her cheeks. He is my master, and I cannot have such thoughts in my mind. Even if he ordered me, I'd have to decline since we are not married, Arturia said, and Issei agreed with the Saber before Susanoo, who was walking by, replied. You know, the nearest registration office is just a few blocks away. The God of Storm said before Issei leaped out of Arturia's arms and smacked his master's head with some of his magic behind it. Do not encourage her. And Medea, don't even think about it. Issei called out as Medea silently cursed herself before returning to her photo session by chasing Arturia around the room to try and get her to wear more outfits. So what's bumming you, kid? Susanoo asked as Issei placed his cards out and replied to his sensei. I'm trying to figure out which servant I should summon next, since I only have 2 left. Don't you mean 3? There's a third one in your pocket. Susanoo said as Issei looked at the card in surprise before seeing it as one that he knew wasn't in his deck before. He looked at the picture of the card and saw only a scale of sorts that a judge was holding in front of it. Ruler, Issei said, his eyes widening as he felt an image pop into his mind. One of these days, you will become a full-fledged person, one who is sure to be extraordinary. But not just yet. It would help if you moved forward step by step. Have patience. A man said to someone next to him while they were walking away at night. She never managed to understand the hearts of men while she was alive, but now that the girl descended as an arbitrator, she seems to have started to display a rich human-like expression somehow. It is unknown how much she had lost until she became able to understand simple things such as laughter, joy, anger, and sadness. Still, even so, it was probably meant to be for her to arrive here. What divine arrangement, no, what irony is it that as a result of elevating her status to that of an inhuman godlike being, she obtained human emotions. This is why she is strangely often playful in her 3rd ascension. She's brimming with curiosity and has even started learning about conversing in English. Innate forms. Shiranui blade. The girl shouted to the heavens. Issei's right hand then moved on its own to ride her as a new image appeared in his mind. The girl with purple hair was riding on top of a massive dragon of sorts while wearing what appeared to be pristine attire. She began to pray and then opened her eyes to shout, divine protection. The next image was of a pink-haired person who seemed to be flying around on a griffin, laughing into battle as they then blew a massive black horn. I'm terrible in battle, but I am perfect at dealing with magic and arrows. Issei's hand then moved to the Berserker card, where Issei saw 3 different women who seemed to be mourning. The first was a woman wearing a wedding dress and crying in a field of flowers. Her heart was broken because she desired not to be alone, but to be loved by someone who accepted her. The second was a white-haired woman with such a rage in wanting to avenge her husband's death that her love that she had for her former husband became passionate love that repays the murder of one's loved one with twice the payback. Lastly, there was a young woman with long blonde hair coupled with a crown and a veil covering her face. She seemingly wore a black dress that exposed her navel and abdomen. She gazed upon the land with a blank expression before speaking. So this is what I lacked in Fairy Britain. No, perhaps not. I could not have possessed it there. Once I gained something more precious than myself, my 2,000-year reign was over. How ironic. This time, I will succeed. I will craft laws that prevent the unexpected loss of both yourself and my ambitions. Issei came back to reality. He knew who to summon, so he picked up the 3 cards before calling out to his caster. Medea. Prepare a summoning circle. It's time to summon our newest members. Issei said as Media was still taking pictures of Alter Artoria, who was feeling her knightly pride being crushed by the embarrassment of the attire that made her look more like a model than a knight. Understood, master. Right after I finished documenting those photos. Media said as she enjoyed the moment while Artoria swore she'd kill Castor one day. Cao Cao placed the paper on the table in front of him before pondering how to approach this since, in a month, he was planning on his assault on the Yaokai faction to claim either Kunu or Yusaka. Still, both would be better for the plan their sponsor has been working on for years. The most troublesome ones will no doubt be that the biggest issues we'll have to deal with are the Shinto gods, Yusaka and Kunu, since she managed to kill one of my most loyal subordinates. Cao Cao said before calling for multiple members of the army to join the meeting room. Cao Cao called upon his most loyal members of the hero faction to appear before him and inform him of their progress, so he began with his loyal knights. Jean. Siegfried. Tell me, how is the progress of training our recruits before the war going? Jean took over and began. Training has been going very well, but it appears that some are still resisting the brainwashing, and as for the progress of claiming the holy swords that form Excalibur, we'll need some additional power to claim those weapons. Fine. See me afterward. Cao Cao said before turning to Leonardo and Marsilio. How are the golems and your training coming along? Cao Cao asked Leonardo and Marsilio, respectively, before Leonardo began to give his report. Leonardo continued, the golems' production is progressing smoothly. We've enhanced their durability and combat efficiency, integrating additional enchantments from our magicians. These upgrades allow the golems to withstand stronger magical attacks and engage in prolonged battles without significant wear. Marsilio added, our troops are steadily improving, and so is my illusion magic. The golems can absorb initial strikes while our soldiers exploit openings. Also, thanks to my illusion magic growing, there is a plan I do have in mind that I think will throw the soldiers into disarray, as well as the Shinto gods, if we play it correctly. Cao Cao nodded in approval. Excellent, also, see me after Jean about this plan of yours. Leonardo, ensure the golems are ready for deployment by the time we launch our assault. We cannot afford any delays or weaknesses. His attention shifted to Siegfried, and he asked him about the two special berserkers for the Rooks, should Heracles betray the hero faction. The first was a black-haired individual, a regular human transformed into a literal berserker named Takashi. Cao Cao's partner had taken him, recognizing the incredible reinforcement magic that flowed unnaturally into his muscular structure, granting him immense physical strength, speed, and endurance, making him a threat to even Satan-level entities in terms of just physical power. The second was a slim-toned young man of average height, with short white hair styled in a bowl cut, possessing large black eyes, named Akihiro. He was a selfish individual who enjoyed torturing and killing those who fought back. A certain devil had experimented on him, enhancing his strength to enable him to enjoy battling stronger opponents in the future. They are adapting quite well since they've been awakened. Takashi's physical enhancements are functioning as expected, and his loyalty to you is absolute. Akihiro's combat abilities and sadistic tendencies have been honed to perfection, and he can enjoy killing just his opponents. However, there are issues of him killing his comrades as well. Siegfried explained, making Cao Cao sigh at the second one since the second berserker could gain power by killing anyone who is either an enemy, comrade, or any other living creature. Thank you for bringing this up, since I think Overkill will be better suited for dealing with a special mission that I have for him involving a brat who refuses to join us. Cao Cao said before he asked if there were any other questions, to which no one had any. Dismissed, Cao Cao ordered, watching as his loyal followers left to continue their preparations. He remained seated, deep in thought. The upcoming assault of the Yaokai faction would be critical. Every detail and every plan had to be perfect. Failure was not an option, not with so much at stake. As the room emptied, Jean lingered behind. Cao Cao, about the additional power we need to claim the holy swords, I have a suggestion. Cao Cao looked up, intrigued. Go on. Jean hesitated for a moment before speaking. There is a legend of an ancient artifact that is said to be useful in killing dragons and demigods, should Vali Lucifer and Bhikkhu betray us. If we could find and harness its power, then it might provide the edge we need against the dragons, which would serve the biblical faction, should the evil dragons lose against them. Cao Cao's interest was piqued. What is this artifact? It's known as. Jean was about to say until the air began to grow cold. Leave. Cao Cao said before continuing to speak to her. Assemble a small team and investigate this lead. If this artifact is real and as powerful as you claim, it could indeed turn the tide in our favor and deal with any annoyances that may come later. Jean nodded and left the room, determination in her stride. Cao Cao leaned back in his chair, the weight of their mission pressing heavily upon him. The stakes were higher than ever, but with his loyal followers and their relentless pursuit of power, he believed they could achieve their goal and bring their sponsor's vision to fruition. The portal opened in the corner of the room, and Office, the Ouroboros dragon, stepped through. Cao Cao greeted her with a respectful nod. "Lady Office," Cao Cao began before asking. "What can you tell me about Darius IV?" The Office's expression remained calm and unreadable. "The one you told me about is a strange child, since they are a cursed being that has been alive but alone for so long. They are like me but different since I enjoyed the silence." "Then what can you tell me about him?" Cao Cao asked before Office walked towards him and placed a finger on his forehead, causing him to scream as a memory played in his mind. Flashback. "What are you doing here, outsider?" A voice rang into the air, making Office stop as she looked to see a small boy walk out into the open. But this child looked like he was around 10 years old, with a crown on his head and a pair of emerald green battle axes in his hands. The boy had an impatient look as he spoke to Office once more. "I asked you a question, outsider. What are you doing in my kingdom? Answer me before I kill you." The boy said as if he was older than he appeared to be until Office saw the image of a massive spirit behind the boy, but the spirit was a massive ruler who rode a massive armored elephant. The spirit's eyes looked at the outsider as if Issei could see him before one word left his mouth. "Leave no." Office smiled at this before speaking to the child. "The hero faction has spoken of a great power that annihilated this kingdom many centuries ago, and I was able to find a name that fits your appearance. Adem mate. The Office was stopped as an axe flew past her head and embedded itself in the wall until it was pulled back to see the child, now identified as Adem, glared back at Office. "Be silent. Do not speak of that wretched last name in front of me again." Office remained silent, but her complexion turned dark as her eyes gained a purple glow before her body began to radiate power. "I suggest you mind your tongue, child. And I was warned by the fake demigod of the Greeks that you hated the royal family of Madish." The two glared at one another before Adem sat down and breathed deeply before sighing at this person. "So what exactly is this? Recruitment to join those wannabe heroes? I would like to extend the offer to you if you'd like to finally leave this pile of rubble that I wouldn't even call a kingdom," Office said as she looked at the ruined kingdom before asking him. "What kingdom was it before it was ruined?" Adem sighed before uncovering his past to the Ouroboros god of infinity. The kingdom of Karak was a thriving kingdom, one much larger than the kingdom this Taj Mahal is located in. Adem soon clenched his fist, which made Office sense his rage before continuing. "But then my father became the next king of Karak and everything went to hell." It's an ironic story, really. A child born in a royal family. However, this child was seen as a black sheep and was kicked onto the streets, saying it was where a cursed street rat like him belonged. The boy was enraged and swore revenge on his family. In that moment of rage, a spirit spoke to him, one who had committed much bloodshed in his past. He promised the boy revenge against his family and revenge he received. Adem said as he held his axes high up in the sky with a smile of joy until it vanished when he continued to speak. However, he had leveled the entire kingdom in his wrath, making the Hindu gods of destruction curse the boy with immortality, forcing him to walk the earth for all eternity. That is the story of the forgotten kingdom Karak and how the black sheep of the Madish family got his revenge, but is now cursed with regret in his heart for all eternity. The Office remained silent for a moment before she spoke to him, trying to recall what she had learned about children from the oath of the hero faction. "Do you regret killing your family for your mistreatment, Adem? And what about the people of the kingdom? Did they not help you when you were thrown into the streets?" Adem was silent as he processed the questions he was asked before standing up and nodding. "I regret killing the people of my kingdom who helped me when I was thrown into the streets, but I do not regret killing my family. I had no siblings, and my bastard father killed my mother, so in a way, I avenged my mother's death. Besides my people's unfair death, I have no other regrets." Adem said as he stood up and put away his axes, making Office surprised that the fake demigod's advice actually worked on the child. "What is the point of leaving my kingdom? I'm immortal. I'm forever in a 10-year-old body that only knows how to kill and destroy. I have no purpose. All I do is do more harm than good, so please. Leave me to regret my actions in peace." "I'm afraid I cannot do that." Adem turned back to Office, only to see her softened snake eyes. "It is not in my nature to leave someone who is clearly in need of a home, a plate of real food, and most of all someone who is in desperate need of a new family." Office said as she repeated the same words that Heracles gave to her, since she wasn't exactly a people person, but throw in some fake sincerity and say some nice words, and then it'll work. Office then held out her hand. "And I can provide all of that for you, child. Throw the crown of your monstrous father away, and I can give you everything you've always wanted." Adem looked at his hand and clenched his fists tightly before their eyes locked. "I have so much blood on my hands I can't get rid of the smell of blood. I know. I'm not a child anymore, but still, I'm like this. I know. I have no idea of what I can do besides destroying and killing people. I know, but that's what family is there for. To help each other in troubling times, especially here and now. So I'll ask you again. Would you join me? Together, we can save many lives and you can learn what it means to have a family. Your people and mother may be gone, but I know they would have wanted you to live. Afif said as Adem felt a strange sensation leave his eyes and couldn't believe what he was doing. I'm crying. I haven't cried in so long. Adem said as he walked towards Afif and hugged her instead, while burying his face in her shoulders, staining her shirt in tears, but Afif didn't care as she patted the boy's head. It's okay, Adem. It's okay. Afif said as she comforted the boy who was cursed to wallow in his sins forever, but now the wrath of the berserker was finally satisfied. The spirit bound to the boy was appeased by this and rested in the body of his partner, hoping that the boy could deliver on his promise. Thank you. Afif smiled at the spirit as she sent him a nod and a mental reply. You're welcome. Then flashback. Cao gasped as he also felt a surge of confidence. Excellent. Their strength will be crucial in the battles to come. Thank you for overseeing the big and gaining a new comrade for us. This pleased Cao immensely since he thought they finally had a major powerhouse to deal with their enemies, until Afif inclined her head slightly. Do not underestimate your enemies, Cao. The path ahead is fraught with danger, but with careful planning and the right allies, you can succeed. Also, be wary of Adem since he trusts me, not you and certainly not any of your comrades, so I suggest you be careful around Adem, since he could easily kill you before you can even harm him with your spear. Afif said with a glare that didn't seem to faze Cao. Cao nodded. I will not forget your words. Our victory depends on our unity and strength. With administration and the berserkers by our side, we are unstoppable, and once the golems are finished, then we can begin our attack. Afif nodded as she disappeared through the portal, leaving Cao with a renewed sense of determination. The pieces were falling into place, and the hero faction's power was growing. The upcoming assault on the Yaokai faction would be the ultimate test of their strength and strategy. Speaking of the Yaokai faction, Issei is dealing with a dilemma. Who should I summon next? Issei pondered aloud as he was done with his training with Susanoo for the day, while Medea was making Alter Arturia wear many dresses, much to Saber's dismay as she knew full well that the caster was a closet pervert who seemed to enjoy treating her as if she was a doll. Oh, you are so cute in this gothic attire. It really complements your pale skin and amber eyes to make you seem like a real goth queen, Medea said as she took many photos of the Saber, who was somehow weak to Medea's grip whenever the perverted caster wanted to dress her up like a doll, before Medea decided to have even meme fun by changing Arturia into a wedding dress. Which made Arturia blush at the attire as well as her reflection. Wow, Arturia said that she had never actually worn a dress before, but she felt very happy in it for some reason. Still, the caster squealed in joy as she then picked up Issei, despite his protests to put him back down and put him in a suit before taking more pictures of the two together with decorations around them, as if they were actually being married. What is this? Issei asked while he was now in Arturia's arms, which made Medea chuckle in amusement before replying to her master. Come on now. You must get into cosplay, or don't you think the outfit suit you and Arturia very well? Medea asked as many of the residents wolf whistled at the two of them until Issei and Arturia looked at each other before the Saber looked away with tints of pink on her cheeks. He is my master and I cannot have such thoughts in my mind. Even if he ordered me, I'd have to decline since we are not married, Arturia said, and Issei agreed with the Saber before Susanoo, who was walking by, replied while having an amused grin on his face. You know, the nearest registration office is just a few blocks away. The god of storm said before Issei leaped out of Arturia's arms and smacked his master's head with some of his magic behind it. Do not encourage her. And Medea, don't even think about it. Issei called out as Medea silently cursed herself before returning to her photo session by chasing Arturia around the room to try and get her to wear more outfits. So what's bumming you, kid? Susanoo asked as Issei placed his cards out and replied to his sensei. I'm trying to figure out which servant I should summon next, since I only have 2 left. Don't you mean 3? There's a third one in your pocket. Susanoo said as Issei looked at the card in surprise before seeing it as one that he knew wasn't in his deck before. He looked at the picture of the card and saw only a scale of sorts that a judge was holding in front of it. Ruler, Issei said, his eyes widening as he felt an image pop into his mind. One of these days, you will become a full-fledged person, one who is sure to be extraordinary. But not just yet. It would help if you moved forward step by step. Have patience. A man said to someone next to him while they were walking away at night. She never managed to understand the hearts of men while she was alive, but now that the girl descended as an arbitrator, she seems to have started to display a rich human-like expression somehow. It is unknown how much she had lost until she became able to understand simple things such as laughter, joy, anger, and sadness. Still, even so, it was probably meant to be for her to arrive here. What divine arrangement, no, what irony is it that as a result of elevating her status to that of an inhuman godlike being, she obtained human emotions. This is why she is strangely often playful in her third ascension. She's brimming with curiosity and has even started learning about conversing in English. Innate forms. Shiranui blade. The girl shouted to the heavens. Issei's right hand then moved on its own to ride her as a new image appeared in his mind. The girl with purple hair was riding on top of a massive dragon of sorts while wearing what appeared to be pristine attire. She began to pray and then opened her eyes to shout, divine protection. The next image was of a pink-haired person who seemed to be flying around on a griffin, laughing into battle as they then blew a massive black horn. I'm terrible in battle, but I am perfect at dealing with magic and arrows. Issei's hand then moved to the Berserker card, where Issei saw 3 different women who seemed to be mourning. The first was a woman wearing a wedding dress and crying in a field of flowers. Her heart was broken because she desired not to be alone, but to be loved by someone who accepted her. The second was a white-haired woman with such a rage in wanting to avenge her husband's death that her love that she had for her former husband became passionate love that repays the murder of one's loved one with twice the payback. Lastly, there was a young woman with long blonde hair, coupled with a crown and a veil covering her face. She seemingly wore a black dress that exposed her navel and abdomen. She gazed upon the land with a blank expression before speaking. So this is what I lacked in Fairy Britain. No, perhaps not. I could not have possessed it there. Once I gained something more precious than myself, Issei came back to reality. He knew who to summon, so he picked up the 3 cards before calling out to his caster. Medea. Prepare a summoning circle. It's time to summon our newest members. Issei said as Medea was still taking pictures of Alter Artoria, who was feeling her knightly pride being crushed by the embarrassment of the attire that made her look more like a model than a knight. Understood, master. Right after I finished documenting those photos. Medea said as she enjoyed the moment while Artoria swore she'd kill Castor one day. Nope. Issei said before grabbing Medea by the back of her cloak and dragging her on the floor, which was a sight to the amusement of others, since it's not every day to see a grown woman pouting with her arms crossed on her chest being dragged by a young adult who wasn't even using magic. But it'll only take 10 minutes. No. That 5 minutes then? No. Come on. Don't tell me you don't want to keep a pic of you and Saber together. Medea said, showing the pic to Issei, who took it out of Medea's hand and smiled at it before handing it to Artoria. Here. Something to show my appreciation and for you to see that you are beautiful. Issei said to Saber, who was shocked at his words before accepting the photo and turning away from her master, smiling at his words and photo. Thank you, Artoria said before pointing to Medea. Now, please remove that pervert. Already on it. Medea will be punished accordingly. Issei said before Medea whined about being left out. No fair. I want to join in too. Medea shouted while whining like a kid, which made Susanoo chuckle at the woman who was still trapped in Issei's hand. She does that. She's just proving Saber's point, right? Tsukiyomi asked his brother before Susanoo sighed and replied. Honestly, she's as bad as you. What's that supposed to mean? I seem to recall you enjoying dressing Amaterasu up when you two played together, plus also, your Siskin issues made you look like a weirdo. I was documenting her cuteness. Tsukiyomi shouted in defense before Susanoo chuckled in response. You're just proving my point. Shut up. And where's our sister anyways? Oh, she's with Kunu for her training in magic, Susanoo said before heading to the training grounds where his pupil would be summoning his last 3 servants. Meanwhile, with our Yokai princess. Issei is going to be so happy when he sees my new transformation. Kunu cheered excitedly as her 9 tails wagged happily while Amaterasu smiled at the girl, knowing that the girl had the right to be happy and find someone she could share her life with. Now, Lady Kunu, you asked me to help you with your fire magic, and while I can help you learn more about fire magic, know that I can only teach you so much, since our magic is very different. Mine relies on using the power of the sun, which can bring warmth to others, but also death to many. Your fire is weaker than mine and isn't really that powerful, but I do believe that with that new power you have, and how much stronger you've become, you can eventually rival me in terms of firepower. Amaterasu said as Kunu nodded and took note of this, since she knew that comparing her magic to that of the literal Shinto god of the sun was crazy, but she knew that one day she'd be able to achieve that kind of power. Now Kunu, using fire magic is dangerous since fire can become stronger or weaker, depending on the emotions of the user. Which is why you need to learn how to control your emotions when using magic. Amaterasu said that she had 5 test dummies in the field and then gave Kunu her instructions. Your assignment is simple. Burn the 5 test dummies with your flames, but without actually causing any damage to them. You have until the end of the day. Amaterasu said as Kunu couldn't believe that she was given such an easy assignment. BFFT. Piece of cake. Kunu said as she fired a fireball at the dummy, but before she could cheer, she saw the dummy slowly catch fire, which caused her to panic before putting out the flames with her ice magic, before seeing Amaterasu giggle at her face. "What's wrong, Lady Kunu? I thought this would have been simple for you, or was I wrong?" Amaterasu asked in a semi-mocking tone as Kunu growled at the goddess before looking back at her target and was determined more than ever to wipe off that smug smile from Amaterasu. That is until they both sensed three powerful forces emerging from Susanu's training grounds. "Welcome to Kyoto. The heart of the Yaokai faction in the 21st century. It's an honor to meet you all," Issei said as he was amazed and was already trying to come up with ways that their base could become stronger and how he could improve as a leader. The rider was Saint Martha. A perfect person, endowed with beauty and overflowing with charm. She is a beautiful saint. Martha has blue eyes and long purple hair reaching below her waist, with a white golden frilled short veil around her head. She wears a pair of blue earrings on each ear. A short blue cloak draped over her shoulders is connected to a red collar. Her main piece of clothing is an unnatural one-piece, a white dress with red trimmings and wide sleeves, revealing its interior gray colors and rose vine pattern. The dress is low-cut, with an exposed trim-like section down the middle all the way down to her navel. In the skirt, it is split apart in 2 points, exposing her legs. The black belt is tied around her waist, connected to a golden ornament by the right hip, which drapes over the remainder of the belt all the way down to her ankles. In addition, Martha wears blue stockings, a set of green and golden gauntlets and greaves, and high-heeled sandals. Martha holds in her right hand her signature staff. A golden pole with pink stripes tied around it and a silver and purple cross at the very top. "I am Martha, just Martha. Let us surely save the world," Martha said while a massive dragon was behind Martha that seemed to be sniffing Issei as if he was a threat to his partner, but Issei showed no fear and smiled at the dragon before patting its snout. "I mean neither of you harm, and I respect your loyalty to Saint Martha, legendary dragon Tarask," Issei said before the dragon bowed its head until Issei turned to greet the other 2 members of the group. Next to her was the ruler of the organization, who Issei recalled from a story told to him by a friend of his who was a devoted member of the church. Pope Joan, a legendary figure from the Middle Ages, was supposedly a 9th century woman who disguised herself as a man to enter the Catholic priesthood. She rose high enough to become pope for a short period, going against the Catholic Church's ingrained tradition of male popes. She didn't actually exist in history, being a purely fictional character. Though the story was widely believed for centuries, there were no references to her of any kind until the 13th century, and modern historians have found no evidence of her existence and concluded the legend to be a work of fiction. Pope Joan, or Johanna, I am putting together an organization, a faction if you will, that is formed to defend humanity against forces that wish to do it harm and those who believe they are heroes but are really using it as an excuse to commit heinous crimes against both the supernatural and humanity, so I wish to have you as my general and my strategist, since I need help to learn how to lead against other armies and such, Issei said as Johanna and Martha was amazed and curious about the proposal before nodding in reply. "I look forward to teaching you, but know that I'm a strict teacher," Martha said as Issei smiled in reply. "I look forward to it, Martha, since I've heard you are scared of hand-to-hand combat. Don't hesitate to call me Issei. We're partners and equals in my faction, so there's no need to call me master or something similar. Also, it'll be weird if others hear that in public," Issei said as Martha nodded in reply before Johanna walked up towards Issei and asked. "And what will my assignment be?" "You'll be on defenses and assisting Semiramis in strengthening our base, as well as the Dragon-Tooth soldiers. I believe we can make them stronger with your arsenal and your leadership," Issei said before Artoria and Medea introduced themselves as Saber and Castor, until Issei was then pulled from their field by Amaterasu, who seemed to be excited for some reason. Medea then reassured Issei that they would look after her until Medea turned to Berserker. "I'm honestly surprised to see that you of the Berserker class responded to our master's call," Medea said while eyeing the Berserker figure and immediately knew who the Berserker was from the Throne of Heroes. The Berserker was a lovely young girl clad in a white dress with empty eyes, carrying a giant mace. Her eyes are normally covered by her long hair and only peek between the gaps. While Medea was in the Throne of Heroes and heard of this Berserker, Medea learned that the Berserker's appearance confused her as to whether her creator had a twisted sense of beauty when looking upon her and calling her repulsive, or if she possesses an inconcealable foulness despite her external beauty. This was none other than Frankenstein's monster, or Frank for short, since she seemed to hate her name. When Frankenstein first looked at Issei and saw his soul, she could tell that her master wasn't disgusted by her, nor was she looked at as some monster, but as a woman instead, which made her heart feel warm. Medea mentally sighed, knowing that that look was in the Berserker, since she also recalled one other thing about the woman before her. Frankenstein was basically a giant puppy that followed her master. Damn it. I take my eyes off her for 1 second and she's gone. Medea yelled before sighing and helping the ruler and rider get situated with their base and their assignments. Issei Haidu. I can't teach you much about magic since your magic differs from mine due to your sacred gear and personal magic, relying on both imagination and fighting like my brother Susanoo. However, I can teach you how to lead an army. Amaterasu said as she pulled out a board and smiled at Issei, who was currently being hugged by Frankenstein, who seemed to rub herself on his body, as if trying to mark Issei with her scent like a dog would something that belonged to them. Which is why we're playing shogi and chess. Chess relies more on strategy and how to utilize your pieces, but as for shogi, it's more of a game of how to use your pieces and utilize the battlefield to your advantage. Amaterasu said as she began to play against Issei, who was nervous about this since he had little to no knowledge about the games, but he tried his hardest. When he was about to mess up a rule, Amaterasu would help him and offer advice on how to improve from his mistakes. This form of training was different from the training he was doing with Susanoo. Still, Issei felt a smile grow on his face as he was enjoying this type of training since he was looking forward to learning how to become a better leader, not just for his faction as of now, but for the future battles he would be fighting against his enemies. However, he had trouble concentrating due to Kunu struggling with the assignment given to her, which is why he lost his 4th game of shogi. It was definitely not because of Frankenstein as well, who was enjoying snuggling up to her new master. After the 4th game, Amaterasu let Issei assist her, which was a sight to see since Kunu was on the ground with her kimono open, which showed off a bit of her cleavage until Issei blushed a bit and looked away. So what's troubling you, Kunu? Issei asked as Kunu groaned heavily and rolled on her stomach before speaking to him, while Frankenstein was being patted on the head by Issei, making her content and happy. Erg. It's the stupid task that Lady Amaterasu told me to do. Kunu said as she sat up with new strength and pointed to the new test dummies set in place by the royal guards. She wants me to set them on fire, but without hurting them. How's that even possible? I've been at this for hours now, and still nothing. Kunu groaned heavily as she fell on her back until Issei stood above her head and replied. Maybe you're doing it wrong or thinking too much. Come on. Tell me what you're doing. Issei said as he helped Kunu up and listened as Kunu told him what she was doing. So what I do is generate my foxfire, and then I send it to the dummies. I try not to ignite them, but they keep burning all the time. Kunu pouted as Issei pondered what the problem was before asking. Have you thought about not letting your anger get the best of you? What's that supposed to mean? Kunu asked as Issei replied. Think about this for a moment. Amaterasu has her normal fire, which burns brightly, but then she has a golden flame that heals and saves lives from death. Think of Hades, he has a flame that incinerates the very soul of all beings, which is why you have to think about what you want the flame to do. The emotions behind it. Issei said as Amaterasu walked up to the two of them and smiled. He's actually correct. She said before sitting next to the two. Fire is a flame that can be used for both good and evil, since it can bring warmth and comfort to those on cold winters, or be used to inflict harm to others like in battle, but what if fire could be used to heal others? The flames respond to the will of the user, which means if you only think of harming others with your fire, then the flames will do just that, but if you wish to heal others, then you must learn how to use your will and send it into the flames. Kunu looked at her hands before nodding as she was looking back at the test dummies before closing her eyes and imagining her fire healing them instead, which made her body glow green, much to Issei's surprise, before she lifted her left hand and sent a forest green-like flames at the dummies which set them ablaze, but to their surprise, that dummies didn't burn. I did it. Kunu asked herself before feeling a hand placed on her head as Amaterasu smiled at her in reply. You did, which means we can get to the fun part of our training, Amaterasu said as she then saw the Yokai princess tackle Issei and hug him while thanking him for his help. Issei didn't mind as he patted her head and enjoyed the feel of her ears. This made Frankenstein pout a bit, but she was amazed by her master comforting and helping the girl with her magic until Medea and Artoria approached them, since they'd been watching the duo, with Medea being happy for the princess being able to accomplish her task. She's starting to understand the importance of emotions in her magic since she's now using the power of a real yokai, Medea said as she could tell that, slowly, the power of the spirit was bonding with the princess's very soul. I think it's time that Issei takes a break, Artoria said as she walked into the room and pulled Issei out with her as they headed to town for one of her favorite pastimes. This food is amazing. I haven't had this food since I was alive. Artoria said as she gobbled down her 20th plate, which shocked the many people in the restaurant, and Issei apologized to the chefs. I'm sorry about her. She's very hungry, so she doesn't know when to stop. Issei said as Martha, Leonidas, and Johanna were slurring because of Scathach pranking the trio by swapping the priestess, the soldier, and the pope for some beer, while Semiramis sighed at the trio. Please mind your manners. We're in a restaurant and it's rude to the other patrons to cause such a stir. Semiramis said as both Martha, Leonidas and Johanna then passed out after drinking too much of their spiked drinks. At the same time, Artoria kept eating her new plate until Issei came back with a defeated expression. Atalanta patted Issei's back with an understanding look on her face. Frankenstein was also comforting her master by not eating, since she didn't really need to consume food due to being a homunculus, not a real human. However, she could still taste and smell, but the berserker never understood why humans lack the senses, since she didn't see the appeal. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. We're seriously going to lose a lot of money because of her massive stomach, Issei said as he looked at his empty wallet, before Semiramis comforted him by patting his back while bringing his head into her shoulder, making Frankenstein back up, since she recalled the assassin of Red from the Greater Holy Grail War as well as Atalanta. There. We'll be able to get through this, master. It's not your fault that Saber turns into a greedy pig and eats everything on her plate with the manners of a dog that's been starved of kibble thrown to its bowl. Semiramis said as Artoria was shocked by the comparison before slamming her hands on the table. Eating the food of another land is the best way to understand the people better. Oh, please. I've said it before and you're just proving my point. You'll say anything as an excuse to shove food into your bottomless pit of a stomach. Meanwhile, some of us who are actually rulers, such as myself, Yusaka and Venelana, know how to eat in a public place. Semiramis said as she began to feed Issei some of her meal, which Issei didn't mind as he enjoyed the food, making the berserker and archer feel a hint of jealousy that the assassin was ahead of the duo, since it was obvious that the caster and assassin of their group were the ones who held Issei's heart the most. Atalanta didn't know why, but she felt sorry for the boy who had been through a lot of pain and sadness, but hid it behind a smile. From the memories of Issei's life, he had basically been someone who truly wished to give so much love to those he cared for. He also originally wanted to become a doctor before falling in love with carnal desires. Still, his desires didn't overwhelm his ability to become a monster. Instead, they wore his heart on his sleeve and wished to give the love Issei had from his heart to the ones who accepted who he was and vice versa. That would also explain why Berserker seemed to be happy with Issei, as he comforted her by her forehead and then rubbing her head, making the Berserker of Black enjoy the warmth that her master provided. It was similar to the sun being close to her body. The actions of both Frankenstein and Semiramis make Artoria begin to feel jealous of the two before, since she enjoyed the photo of the two of them in the perverted caster cosplay, until she saw Issei holding out a fork with some food. Want some, Artoria? Issei asked, making Artoria blush at the memory of being fed some cake, until she took a bite of the meat and enjoyed it even more, which made Scathach stifle a chuckle when looking at the duo from where she sat with Medea, using a tissue to hide her bloody nose while taking pictures with her camera. Which almost led to them being kicked out until Yusaka reassured the staff that Medea's a special case. Kunu, on the other hand, was smiling while looking at Issei and picturing herself eating with him until an idea popped into her mind that made her smile with a wide grin, thinking of a fun way to not only tease Issei, but also to cuddle with him tonight. Evening. Man, this bath is so worth the workouts I go through with you and Susanoo-sensei, Issei said while looking at Leonidas, Susanoo, and Tsukiyomi, who was far from the trio on the other side. I get that feeling. I do enjoy soaking in a bath after I spar with Kunu. So, is Kunu like yours and Yusaka's kid, or are you like her brother? Issei asked, making Susanoo spit a massive spit of his tea until he calmed down and replied to his pupil. Well, I won't lie when I say that I am infatuated with Lady Yusaka, but she's still loyal to her husband, who's basically been gone for so long I don't know what she ever saw in him. Susanoo said that Issei was interested in the story along with Leonidas before Susanoo continued. I still have feelings for her, and I'll continue to train and look after Kunu, since she wishes to become a strong leader when her mother passes on to the next life. Have you ever told her about your feelings? Issei asked before Susanoo sighed in response. I did, and Yusaka rejected me. What? Leonidas and Issei yelled in surprise before Susanoo hushed them. Be quiet. Do you want everyone to hear your yelling? Susanoo asked before Issei and Leonidas hushed until Susanoo continued. Yusaka was still in love with her beloved husband and didn't wish to string me along or my emotions for a love that wasn't there, so we just remained friends, Susanoo said before tilting his head back and looking at the starry night sky. But it's a good thing we never got together, otherwise, Yusaka and her husband would have never had Kunu, who I see as an adorable child that I've come to love as if she were my little sister. Hey, I thought I was the cute little sister. Don't steal my title, Kunu. Amaterasu yelled from the women's side while Kunu tried to swim away from the sun goddess. Ah. Get away. Get away. Get away. Susanoo and the guys laughed at the noise until Susanoo continued. The part of my heart still belongs to the kind woman I've met and loved, but I would never want to hurt her feelings because of my selfishness, so I'm content with being a friend at most and an acquaintance at the least, Susanoo said. At the same time, Tsukiyomi stayed quiet but patted his brother's back in comfort. Issei honestly felt bad for his sensei and wanted to see if maybe he could help Yusaka get together with Yusaka until Susanoo stopped his train of thought. Don't even think about it, Susanoo said, flicking his forehead, surprising Issei before Susanoo explained. Kunu has tried before, but she understands our situation, so don't try anything, or I'll make your training 100 times more difficult. Oh really? I'm in. Issei said with Susanoo feeling like his empty threat backfired on him until Tsukiyomi stepped in to save his brother. Actually, you'll be training with me since your sacred gear, the Annihilation Maker, is something I can help you with since you've been pushing yourself physically, but you still lack understanding of what your sacred gear is truly capable of, which is why tomorrow you'll be training with Media and I. Tsukiyomi said, which surprised Issei, but also a bit concerned since the moon god didn't seem to really care about Issei, but if Media were going to be there then he would at least have some protection. Okay. I'm down for your help, but I doubt you can do much since Susanoo called you the weakest of the trio. Issei said, causing Susanoo to stiffen, while Tsukiyomi had a cramp on his left eyebrow until he turned to his brother, who just decided to leave the bath. I think that's long enough for me. Oh really? Why not stay and explain yourself, brother? The gods argued a bit while Issei was smiling while forming some popcorn with his sacred gear before sharing it with Leonidas, who was going to enjoy himself watching the two gods fight. Now, this is how one ends an evening. It's a movie for the ages. And we get front row seats. Indeed. Leonidas said before the brotherly duo began to watch the gods wrestle and fight with both fists and magic, which was a perfect but chaotic way to end the evening. But little did they know, the hero faction would be ready to face them, along with his new friend, who would be a true challenge for the two demi-servants. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Nefarious Doctor for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.